Hey guys, good morning. Good morning. Hey Judy. Hey Jelly Bean. Hey Nancy. I hope you guys had a good evening. I did. I played Hogwarts Legacy and I watched Shane's Dumb Criminals. I watched was it the most hilarious or the funniest arrest or whatever? And then I watched Biggins, and that same arrest was on Biggins last night. Um, and then I think Jelly Bean got a little offended when ATX Alley called him Drunken Gandalf. It was so funny. I loved it. Oh, I loved it. That was so funny. No, I do not have any ice cream, Nancy. Oh, I do not have any ice cream. I'm gonna have to get Travis to go get us some more. Oh, that was so funny. Oh, yeah. We watched it while we ate dinner last night. And usually if I watch something while we're eating dinner, Travis, when we get done, Travis will get up and leave, and I will sit there and watch the rest. Travis sat there and watched it with me the whole entire thing, and he was laughing the entire time. And then when the guy said, "You guys slammed me to the ground," Travis said, "Yeah, in slow motion." That was amazing. If you guys have not seen that, go to Shane's Dumb Criminals and watch it. What's it called? Funniest arrest ever. It is hilarious. It is absolutely. I feel for the poor guy. He said he was 62 years old. He looked a lot older than 62. He's had a rough life. That poor guy. Oh my gosh. He was on a bicycle. I think it was a 3-wheeler bicycle, right? He kept saying it was a 2-wheel bicycle?
Yeah, you had one of them double riders hooked up to the back of it.
Oh, okay. Because somebody in chat last night said it was a 3-wheel bicycle.
No, it had 4 wheels. A regular bike had 2.
Okay, so it had like what's it called? The thing on the back?
I call it a double rider because it was double seat.
Okay. Well, Travis says it's called a double rider. It has like a thing on the back for another passenger. So like, for 2 passengers in the back, a double rider thing that hooks on in the back of the bicycle. But the guy kept saying that it was made in China. It didn't because he said the cop told him to get off the bicycle, and he said, "I can't. It doesn't have a kickstand because it's made in China." And he got pulled over because it didn't have a light on the back, and the cop almost hit him. Nancy said hi. And then he said, "It's not my fault it doesn't have a light on it. It's a Chinese piece of And the cop goes, "Walmart sells rear lights for bicycles." I love Gandalf too, because J.R.R. Tolkien, the symbolism in Lord of the Rings, I don't know the whole thing. There's a book about it. The ring represents sin. We're not going to get into religion, but the ring represents sin and Gandalf represents Jesus. Because remember when Gandalf is Gandalf the Grey and then he dies, he comes back, he's Gandalf the White. Gandalf represents Jesus. So anyways, so I love Gandalf. But he had that weird accent, and we couldn't place it. Who is Mr. Pancake? I've never heard of Mr. Pancake. I've never heard of Mr. Pancake. Anyway, I think the accent was fake. I don't know what that accent was. Dang my eye. Why? Good gravy, Marie. I guess I'm gonna have to. I don't know. It's done this all my life. I'm 56 years old. I mean, I guess it's pointless to go to the doctor right now and say my eye waters all the time. Ugh. What? I know. I don't know why my eye waters like this. I have never heard of Mr. Pancake. No, I've never heard of Mr. Pancake. Someone needs to enlighten me. Oh my god! Oh my god. Okay, somebody send me a link. Oh my god, somebody send me a link. I have never heard of that. Oh my god. Okay, let's go ahead and get started. We're still on Detective Renteria. I like to say it Renteria. I don't know why, I just like it that. Which is how the defense is saying it. Well, it would work better if I'd share my screen first.
And the witness are present, you may proceed. Mr. Clark.
Thank you. Before we get back to the fingernails, Mr. Renteria, I wanted to go back. One of my colleagues, luminol, in other words, what dilution will it detect using the chemicals that you actually put together, your laboratory?
Okay, it's too early for this. There we go.
Was it like 1 in 10,000, 1 in 20,000, 1 in a million? Are you able to tell us that?
I don't have a number to tell you, but I do know based on practical experience that it.
Well, let me ask you this. Are you, other than your training and experience in using luminol and published
My Yes, that one I did see. Yes, that one I did see. Well, shoot.
regarding that or anything such as that?
No,
And how about this KM or Kasselmeyer testing that uses the chemical reagent using phenolphthalein?
no,
So just your education, which you were told like in seminars, on that your testimony concerning. Is that correct? You would actually, whether it's luminol or whether it's KM testing, if you had a question about that, you'd actually go to the research and look it up and get more definitive information if you had a question about that subject. Is that correct?
yes. If I had to answer, how many studies were done, let's say with luminol, and what type of range of dilutions gave a positive result, I would have to go to the references and look that up.
And you said you had some experience in blood spatter, but it doesn't sound like you really that's not something you regularly do. Is that also true?
Correct.
Okay, so you would defer to other experts in that field. Is that also true?
That's true. Like in this case, which is a reconstruction case, or any other case that involved blood spatters, I would refer to other people in the laboratory to make that reconstruction based on that type of evidence.
Okay, blood spatter, blood drops, things of that nature. Is that correct?
Well, how the spatters and drops came to be on the surface. I can identify a blood drop, in the size of the drop and possibly the angle that the blood drop would have impacted. But coming up with the reconstruction scenario of what overall happened, that's what I would defer to other experts.
And just as an example, that's why you take photographs of these drops so that you could look at them later, because if you didn't see them yourself, then you wouldn't know what they look like and what their characteristics were. Is that true?
That's very true, yes.
Now, we broke here, and I was starting to ask you some questions about fingernails and looking at fingernails as far as the forensic biology work that you do. And you do that on a regular basis, isn't that correct?
Yes.
And you do that, basically, you're looking at fingernail scraping sometimes. Sometimes you look at the actual fingernails, and you're trying to not necessarily detect who the fingernails belong to, because we kind of know where they came from. You're looking for foreign material, isn't that true?
Yes.
And there's two types of foreign material that you're interested in. You're looking for maybe foreign tissue, correct?
Correct.
And blood, isn't that correct?
Yes.
And sometimes, because of the sensitivity of this testing, sometimes it can even pick up skin cells. Like, let's say if somebody just brushes up against somebody, they might collect some skin cells under their fingernail that you might be able to analyze using DNA technology. Isn't that true?
That's possible, yes.
It doesn't have to be a big gouge or a scratch to do that. Isn't that correct?
Yes.
And there was an example that Mr. Jackson used concerning Mr. Dixon's favorite pen. And basically, his DNA, we might expect to find that on his pen, because he handles it all the time. Isn't that true?
Yes.
And then you saw Mr. Jackson using that pen as an example. You might be able to find Mr. Jackson's DNA on that very same pen now that he's handled it. Isn't that true?
That's possible, yes.
And in fact, that's not unlikely, isn't it? That you wouldn't be surprised if you found Mr. Jackson's DNA on that pen right now.
If he just handled it, I would expect to see more cells from Dixon, because it's his pen. He would handle it a lot longer and more constantly. And if Mr. Jackson just picked it up for that demo that you're describing,
right,
there would most likely be more cells from Mr. Dixon than Mr. Jackson, and I may not see DNA from Mr. Jackson.
Okay, but you wouldn't be surprised if you found Mr. Jackson's DNA on that pen, because he recently handled it. Isn't that correct?
Correct.
Okay. And the DNA doesn't just come from his hand. In other words, from skin on his hand. It could be that he, maybe had his hand near his mouth, and it's actually cells from the mouth or from the eyes. A wealth of different areas could end up on that pen, even though he only touched it with his hands. Isn't that true?
That's correct.
In fact, the mouth and the eyes, they slough off a lot of DNA. Would that be a fair statement?
Yes.
And dander, people's hairs, falls off of things. It could end up getting on an item. Isn't that true?
Yes.
Now, when you look at the scrapings under a fingernail, you took some scrapings that were collected by Jamie Lintemuth. Isn't that true?
Yes.
And setting aside what we're calling the damaged nail, because that's a different collection process, isn't that right? Looking for foreign biological material under Lana Clarkson's fingernails, isn't that correct?
That's right. I examined those scrapings after Dr. Harold had examined them. Again, she was the individual or expert in charge of the reconstruction. So she looked at those items first, did her analysis, and I'm sure she'll talk about that. Then I got those samples from her to sample them for the purposes of DNA.
Okay, I want to talk about the work that you did, and we'll let Dr. Harold deal with whatever she did. You were told by her, though, that she can look under a microscope and she can detect blood just by looking at it, just visually?
Under a microscope.
Under a
yes.
microscope, okay. Is that generally accepted in the scientific community that you can do that?
I imagine it would be if you had training in it, as she has.
Okay, and your community, your scientific community basically relies on the Kastle-Meyer or other similar tests to detect blood, isn't that correct?
Yes.
Now, with reference to your work on the fingernail scraping, did you look at the testing vision?
Them, let's say under a microscope, I just took samplings that would move on to DNA.
Okay, so you basically left the visual.
StreamYard, what are you doing? Seriously. It's just going nuts.
Visualization part to her, and you went to these other steps that you talked about earlier, steps 2, 3, 4, and 5. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Right hand, actually.
That's correct.
Okay, and basically you took all of the biological material and you put them in a test tube from the left and right hand, isn't that correct?
Yes.
And basically, did you pull them together? Is that what you did?
No, this particular item, the scrapings that the coroner's office used to take samples is, if you've had a manicure before, which I have, a long stick that has a flattened end at one end, and they use that stick to get under the nails. One or a piece of paper, then put it in the paper, fold it up, and then that goes into evidence. So what I examined for the scrapings was that section of the stick that would have come into contact under the nails. I literally cut off that particular end, the user end of that stick, put that into a plastic tube, then started the DNA process.
And your understanding of this process is that this stick is used to basically pull out, try to grind out all the grime under the fingernails.
They used the stick part to get the DNA? I thought they used what was actually underneath the nail itself for the DNA.
Basically.
Not necessarily. What it's trying to do, like you explained earlier, is to try to find any foreign material that might be present other than the victim. So one would not, I would imagine, would want to be digging into the bed of the nail, because then you'll be picking up a lot of the victim's tissue.
And if you did that, it might overwhelm the sample and you wouldn't get the foreign material detected, correct?
That's right. The sole purpose of this is to try to find foreign material that might be present under the nail.
And essentially what happened is one stick is used for one hand, one stick is used for another?
Yes.
Okay, so basically you get a kind of a left hand sample, you get a right hand sample, is that correct?
Yes.
And in this case, since there was a broken piece of acrylic, as you've learned, they did a broken nail kit and that was separately done, isn't that true?
Yes.
Okay, and so you actually had 3 samples to work with. You had the broken nail kit sample, correct?
Correct.
Which was cut off, is that true?
Yes.
Okay, and then you had the scrapings that you just testified about, correct?
Yes.
And in your experience, you have tested fingernails over the years a number of times, is that correct?
Yes.
And you've reported out foreign material that biologically is connected with other people many times, isn't that true?
Well, it's that type of evidence, because it's so minute. I think I could remember, maybe I could count on one hand how many cases where I actually got enough foreign material to get a DNA profile from whoever the second person was on the nail. Most of the time, what we find, especially if there's a lot of bleeding, what we find is the victim's DNA profile from their own nails. But the answer is yes, you can get it, but it's not that common.
Do you actually do a lot of casework, or do you do more supervisory?
I do a lot of casework, not as much as some of the analysts under me, but I do some casework.
In the last couple of years, how many times have you even analyzed fingernail scrapings?
Probably in the last 2 or 3 years, I probably could remember just 3 or 4 cases, including this one,
Okay.
where I attempted to get foreign DNA.
And it's in the scientific literature, there's a lot of talk about doing fingernail scrapings, how to do it, how to best optimize your results. Is that correct?
Yeah, there are a few papers on it in the scientific journals.
And you're familiar with those papers, I take it?
I know of a few of them, yes.
And you've actually been to some scientific conferences where they talk about doing fingernail scrapings and testing for foreign material. Is that correct?
Yes, every once in a while, papers would be presented covering that subject.
And you follow those scientific procedures when you do the type of work you do regarding fingernails. Isn't that correct?
Yes.
Now, when you do the fingernail scrapings, do you do anything to try to chemically identify whether or not there's blood in the scrapings that you've talked about?
Well, if I'm doing the case from screening and sampling to the very end, yes, I would most likely sample the area first, then go back and do a KM test to see if there's any blood. In this particular case, as I mentioned before, Dr. Harold did the screening prior to me sampling. So all the screening questions of what she found or didn't find would be better for her to answer than me, since I didn't do them.
Okay, did you get the results of what her screening was? Because typically you do that yourself, and then you would follow up with the biological testing.
If verbal results, and I think what I remember, maybe 2 of the 3 samples, she was able to identify blood microscopically. So I did not go back and do KMs on those items.
Did she identify blood from the broken nail? Is that where she identified it from?
Again, you would have to ask her.
Okay. In any event, you were looking for fingernail results regarding Lana Clarkson's left and right hand. Is that correct?
The scrapings from the left and right hand, yes.
And just like with any type of testing, this particular type of testing that you use, this STR, PCR-based testing, can detect mixtures of biological sources. Is that correct?
Yes.
And when you do a DNA test, let's say you're doing a fingernail scraping test and you're putting it in the test tube, just like you did in this particular case, and you get a profile or a mixture of 2 people's profile or even 3, you don't know what type of biological material created that profile. Is that correct?
We wouldn't know with absolute certainty. If there was blood identified, one could assume it could be from the blood. If a microscopic exam was done and if skin or a skin tag or a piece of skin was noted at the end of the nail, then one could assume that possibly the DNA was from the skin. But to say absolutely, the answer is no.
You don't know whether it's could come from skin and some blood that you can't even see, or a little bit of saliva, skin, and blood. It could be a combination of any one.
That is a scary face right there. Look at that stare. Why would anyone want to spend the night with that?
Or all 3.
Correct.
Could be just saliva, theoretically, correct?
Correct.
And that came off the mouth, or some cells that came out of the eyes when somebody rubbed their eyes.
That's correct.
Or a little bit of dandruff, even if you find it on a fingernail.
Yes.
And so there's no way scientifically you can make any statement that something came from skin versus dandruff or anything such as that. Is that correct?
Well, it all depends what you see. One of my examples, if you look microscopically and you saw a piece of skin and you were qualified to identify it as skin, and that gave you a profile, then I think one could have the opinion that DNA came from that piece of skin.
And if there's a mixture, then where would the other DNA come from?
Well, the other part of it, you may not be able to tell, and it could be the different various areas that you have described.
Okay, so when there's a mixture, then you really don't know where the item, you know that some DNA came from that potential skin, but you're not sure where the other DNA came from. Is that true?
That's true.
Now, one of the things that you use to sort of help you out is you do this testing type work, presumptive testing. Is that correct?
Yes, or any other screening test that would help you identify if blood was present.
And if something was like a positive for KM, then you say, well, there might be blood present there. That's the presumptive test, correct?
Yeah, there could be some blood there, or somebody could identify it microscopically. One would say there could be some blood component in that mixture.
And the reason that you look at fingernails is because sometimes you can get foreign profiles there and you can maybe verify that a struggle occurred between two people, or you can prove that two people had contact in a particular way. Isn't that true?
That's right. I would say prove that they had contact. I'm not sure if it would prove, definitely that there was a struggle, but at least some kind of contact.
Physical contact, because actually, theoretically, if we're, like you talked about some of the glassware that you tested, it had mixtures and so forth. It could be two people sharing a glass and different DNA gets on that glass. Isn't that true?
Well, I think what you're trying to describe, if I came to you and shook your hand and maybe dragged my nails from the back of your hand by accident, I could pick up some of your skin cells under my nail. I wouldn't do it intentionally. There was no struggle, but it could happen.
But let's say there was some glassware that you tested, some brandy snifters, and you saw a mixture, Ms. Clarkson's DNA profile, Mr. Spector's DNA profile. Is that what you found?
Yes, I found mixed profiles on those items.
Okay. Does that mean they both drank from the glass, or they both handled the glass, or do you know?
I don't know.
Okay. Could be.
All I know is both their DNA profiles were consistent in those mixtures.
Okay. So with reference to Ms. Clarkson's fingernail scrapings, did you subject them to this DNA copying process, this PCR process?
Yes.
And there's a standard number of terms or cycles that you go through with all samples. Isn't that true? A range?
Yes.
Okay. And you did the same thing with those samples as you did with the others. Is that correct?
Correct.
And in order to determine whether there's DNA present, because you made some statements in your direct exam that sometimes you don't take the process any further. You go through an evaluation stage, and that's a quantification stage. Is that correct?
Yes.
And that's where you put a little bit of the sample in a through a quantification stage where you actually kind of measure the DNA in a molecular way. True?
That's
Correct?
Yes.
And the unit of measurement that's typically used is a nanogram unit of measurement. Isn't that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And tell the jurors what a nanogram is. What is that type of unit of measurement?
A nanogram is a description of how much DNA by weight is present. And if I get my numbers right, I know it'll be close to the right number, but a nanogram is a billionth of a gram. So if you took something that weighed 1 gram and cut it up in a billion pieces, one of those pieces would be 1 nanogram.
Okay. So Mr. Jackson was showing you this little lead pencil and so forth. That's much bigger than a billionth of a gram. Isn't that true? Well, let me ask you this question. A billionth of a gram, you can actually test and get a result on 1 nanogram. Isn't that true?
Yes, if the DNA is in good condition, there's no interferences that would cause the reaction the amplification reaction not to give the proper cycling or duplications each time it cycles through. 1 nanogram should give you DNA results.
And when you go through this process and you measure the DNA, you actually record how much you recover from various samples. Isn't that true?
Yes.
And for example, in the fingernail example, you have that documented in your notes that you have to keep your certification. Isn't that true?
Yes, it would be in the case file.
Okay, and could you tell us what kind of nanogram recovery you got from the fingernails before you got the profile that you reported in your casework?
I would have to look in that particular case file.
Okay, will that take you a long time, or?
It may. Let me see if I can find it quickly.
If it's going to take you a while, I'll move on. We'll talk about it in the morning.
Why don't you go ahead and move on, and then he can take a look for it.
Okay.
Do you have more than another 15 or 20 minutes of cross?
I do.
Okay, then he can look for it overnight.
Thank you.
Okay.
Mr. Renteria, let's get to the reporting of your results. When you have a result, a profile that you develop from an evidence sample, you make a report concerning that. Is that true?
I'm sorry, could you repeat that?
When you have a result from a test that you do of an evidence sample, like fingernails or a ginger ale bottle or anything like that, you document and summarize your result in a report, do you not?
Yes.
And you actually describe what your result is, and then you put a table of what the genetic markers that you find are applicable to that particular sample. Isn't that correct?
Yes.
And then in that table, you have the reference samples in one part of the table, and you can actually compare the evidence samples to the reference samples. Isn't that correct?
Yes, we make those tables so lawyers can also make a visual comparison.
And sometimes they're enlarged for the purposes of the jury to see. Isn't that true?
That's true.
Okay. In this particular case, let's start with the left hand fingernail scrapings. Did you analyze those and come up with some type of a result?
Yes, I did.
And did you publish that in your report?
If I may refer to my report.
Yes.
Okay, you were mentioning the left hand
Yeah, let's go
fingernail
to the left hand,
scrapings. Okay.
and we'll go to the right, so keep it right there.
The left hand fingernail scrapings was consistent with a single source of DNA, and that DNA profile matches the DNA profile from Lana Clarkson.
Okay, now when you say it matches, meaning, well, let me ask you this question. Essentially, everybody that has a DNA profile can have two different types of DNA from at each location. Is that correct?
Two types at each DNA marker is a possibility.
Okay.
Two different types.
Two different types. They could have two of the same type. Is that correct?
That's right. And it would look just like one number. You would have one number. An example for one DNA marker we have, you could have a 10 and a 13 type. I could have a 9 and a 14 type. Mr. Jackson could have just one type, an 8.
And that he actually has two, but they're both 8. Isn't that true?
That's correct.
And basically, one of the laws of genetics are that you get one type from your parent, one from your father, one from your mother. Is that true?
That's right. One type each from each parent, mother and father.
And if you see a third type, then you know that there has to be a mixture in that particular sample, because it's impossible for you to give more than two types.
Well, there are genetic situations. In general, that is a correct statement, but there are genetic situations where some individuals can have a third type that was either inherited by one of their parents, and you would actually see three different types, usually at only one marker though. And then there's also situations where mutations can occur or changes in the DNA as you're developing from an embryo to a fetus. And sometimes that can result in having three types at one marker. And again, usually you only see it at one marker. We actually have a couple individuals at the lab that exhibit that particular phenomenon, me being one of them.
And that's very rare. Is that correct?
I wouldn't say very rare. I would say less than 1%, but it does happen. And we have 3 individuals at our lab that have it.
Okay. When you did the reference sample for Lana Clarkson, you didn't see her have that phenomenon. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. So if we saw a third marker, it's called an allele. Is that true?
We like to call it a type for the jury. I think it's a little more easier to understand. But yeah, scientifically, it's called an allele.
Okay. One allele from mom, one allele from dad. You can inherit usually a maximum of 2. Is that correct? At any one location?
That's right. One type from mother, one type from father.
Okay. So when you did the left-hand fingernail scrapings and you carried it through this process, you were looking for any type or allele, using both of those terms interchangeably, that was inconsistent with Lana Clarkson, essentially, because that would be foreign to her. Is that correct?
Well, we're looking at the profile, and we would be able to determine if there was a type present in that sample that could not have originated from Lana Clarkson.
Okay, and you talked a lot about looking at minor and major amounts of DNA, and your testing that you use now, you're able to do that because the sensitivity of the testing and the ability to look at small amounts of DNA has greatly increased over the last couple of years. Isn't that true?
That's true. It really depends on the sample. If you have a lot of genetic material to test, there are occasions, and it's not 100%, where you can tell if there's a major or minor donor. Sometimes, and I think I described in one of these things, you can't tell because there's close to an equal part, 50-50, and you really can't tell who donated more DNA or less DNA. That happens a lot also.
Okay, and you analyzed and did explain something that's kind of like a Xerox kind of process where you're copying the DNA?
Yes.
And sometimes DNA that's basically in better shape copies better than DNA that's not in good shape. Is that a fair statement?
Yeah, that's very good, yes.
Okay, so you might have more DNA, but it copies less than less DNA that copies better. Isn't that true?
In the scenario you're setting up, if you had more DNA, but it was in very poor shape, you're right. It would copy less. And if you had a smaller amount of DNA in your mixed sample, but it was in very good shape, there's a chance that can amplify more than the bad DNA.
And it would just look like there's more, but in fact, you really can't tell one way or the other. Isn't that true?
Well, if it looks like there's more, sometimes you could tell, and that's when we declare a major minor. But again, there are occasions where you can't tell.
Now, Mr. Jackson talked to you a little bit about timing of DNA. In other words, asking you to whether you can say how old DNA is or how new DNA is or when it was put somewhere. If you tested that countertop that's right in front of you and you got a DNA profile, would you be able to say, well, this was there, let's say, a day ago, a week ago, or 10 minutes ago?
Would not be able to say.
Okay, so would you be able to tell if it was a mixture, which DNA got there first?
No.
So with reference to Lana Clarkson's left, well, let me ask you this question. You look at a number of different locations on the DNA molecule to try to determine whether foreign DNA is there or whether a mixture is present. Is that correct?
Yes, we look at a number of markers to determine that.
Like you even look at the sex marker, is that correct, the amylogenin?
Yes.
And so you look at 13 different markers.
Like you even look at the sex marker, is that correct? And then you said
The amylogenin, did I pronounce that right?
Amylogenin.
Amylogenin.
Do you need a spelling, Cindy?
I didn't answer.
Huh?
I need an answer to that question.
I don't,
I don't have an answer to his question. Like you even look at the sex marker, is that correct? The amylogenin?
Amylogenin.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay.
all right.
In addition to the sex marker we just talked about, how many different locations do you look at to determine whether a match occurs or doesn't occur with a particular known person?
Well, back in 2003, the technology we used produced 13 different DNA markers plus amylogenin.
So 14 total, and each one of them could potentially show that a mixture was present. Is that true?
Yeah, I wasn't finished with my,
Oh, sorry.
my previous answer. If you have enough DNA back in 2003 to get those 13 DNA markers, you would have to split your sample up and do 2 separate amplifications to get those 13. Now, there are occasions, especially with smaller stains, that you don't have enough DNA to split the sample to do 2 tests, so you only do 1 test. And if there was only enough to do 1 test, you would only be attempting 9 DNA markers. The second kit would actually amplify 6 DNA markers. 2 of those markers would be exactly the same as the 2 in the first kit, and that's how you would get a total of 13.
Okay.
So depending on how much DNA you had, it would either be 13 DNA markers or 9, and that's assuming you get results for all the markers.
And with the left hand fingernail scrapings, how many different markers did you look at? If you could quickly look at your table of results.
Yes. For that particular sample, I was only able to amplify enough for the 1 test, so I attempted 9 DNA markers.
Okay. And in any of those 9 markers that you looked at, did you see a mixture of DNA between more than one person?
No, the profile was consistent with coming from a single source.
At each location, is that correct?
Well, we look at each location separately, but when we make interpretations and try to determine what is this profile telling us, we take the entire profile into account, not just one at a time. So given the entire profile, it's consistent with coming from a single source.
In one of the questions that you were asked by Mr. Jackson, you indicated that there was a Y mark that was found in a sample, let's say on the rag that you tested, and that indicated that would be foreign to Lana Clarkson because she could never have a Y marker. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, so you knew that just by that one Y marker showing up in extremely low quantities, that there had to be a mixture of DNA on that particular sample. Is that true?
Yes.
Okay, and that's the only place you saw where a mixture occurred. Isn't that correct?
Yes.
And so even though you didn't see it in every location, you saw it in one location, which told you scientifically there had to be somebody that was a male that donated some DNA to that sample. Is that correct?
That's right. And that's because it is the amylogenin marker or sex identifying. The other markers tell us nothing about sex. So even if we saw one allele or type at one DNA marker, I wouldn't be able to say it was from a male or from a female because it doesn't detect that.
But you would be able to say whether or not it came from a particular individual or could have come from a particular individual. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay. So for example, on the bullets that were taken from the gun, you swabbed all of the bullets. Is that correct?
No, as I described earlier, I only swabbed, when you say all of the bullet,
All of
I'm
the
assuming
tips of
you
the
mean
bullets.
the entire bullet. I only
No.
swabbed the top.
The tips of each
Right.
one, though.
The exposed bullet, all 5 of them were put together into one sample.
Okay, but you swabbed all of them. In other words, you just didn't pick out one versus the other. You swabbed the tips of each one,
That's right, all 5 live cartridges.
including the cartridge that was in the void that wasn't exposed. Isn't that, you swabbed that one?
Yes, it only holds 6 bullets.
Okay.
One of them was fired.
So that you only had 5 to work
Right.
with.
So there was no exposed bullet. That was just an empty case because it was fired. I believe Detective Katz, if I remember right, I received them. And I'm getting to the answer. But
Okay.
when I received them, there were 5 live rounds plus the expended cartridge in a envelope. So I don't know which bullet was in which position. I know the expended cartridge was in position number 1 or on the top, but I don't know which one of them was in the bottom one that, as you described.
Well, there was one in the bottom one that was in what's called the void position. Isn't that true?
Well, they would have to be because
You'd have
there's
to.
only 5 more bullets that could fit in that chamber.
You didn't know which one it was, but you swabbed all of the live rounds, including the one that would have been in the void. Is that correct?
That's correct.
You'd put all of the DNA in a test tube eventually. Isn't that correct?
Yes,
Yeah, actually, you used 2 swabs, then you combine the swabs,
correct.
okay, including the DNA from the bullet in the void. Is that correct?
Whichever one it was, yes.
Whichever one it was.
Yes.
And you can't say whether all of that DNA came from blood or saliva or touching or anything such as that. You can't say that, can you?
Well, I believe Dr. Harold identified blood on several of those exposed bullet portions of those cartridges.
She didn't identify any blood on the void bullet. Is that true?
I don't know.
Okay.
You'd have to ask Dr. Harold.
Okay. But you would assume that there would be no blood on the void bullet. Isn't that correct?
Last foundation to say that.
Are you able to answer that? You think you are able to offer an opinion based on your training?
Can you ask that again? I'm sorry.
The void wouldn't be exposed to
Speculation.
the outside world, so to speak, as far as blood being tossed around. Isn't that true?
Objection, once again, this witness lacks the foundation.
Let's find out. I want to ask him if he is able to, are you able to answer that question?
Well, Your Honor, I'm not a firearms expert, and that might be a better question for a firearms expert to see how much room is in what you're calling the void bullet. I don't know if you had blood going towards that gun, if there'd be enough room for some blood to get into whatever crevices are there.
Okay. Based on that answer, then the objection would be sustained as to going further with that because he can't give necessarily a correct answer.
You did some presumptive blood testing on the swabs that were used to swab these tips of these bullets. Isn't that correct?
If I may refer to my notes.
Please
Yes.
do.
And that'll be our last question and answer for the day.
Not even one more, Your Honor?
Oh, if you want one more, you can
Okay,
have one
thank
more.
Yes, at this particular sample, the 5 exposed bullet portions of those cartridges were sampled as described earlier. After those were sampled with the swabs, I went back with a clean swab with a little bit of water and touched each bullet again. I then tested that swab with the KM reagent and I got a weak positive,
Okay.
which would be indicative of blood being present on one or several of those lead rounds.
And all of the DNA either came back to Lana Clarkson or another person who was genetically inconsistent with Philip Spector.
No, all of the DNA, with exception where she was major, came back to Lana Clarkson only. And there was only one marker that had one type within it that was foreign to Lana Clarkson and Phil Spector, the one type.
The one type, which means that it had to be a mixture. Is that true?
Yes,
And it had to be a mixture of Lana Clarkson and somebody other than Philip Spector.
correct.
And with
All right.
that, we'll take our break.
Thank you. If you keep in mind Mr. Plord's admonition, as well as mine, and we will be in recess until 9:30 tomorrow morning. Thank you. The witness will return.
Okay. So that is all we're going to do of Phil Spector today. And we were going to go to the trial, but thanks to our wonderful mod, Judy, we are going to watch something. If I can get StreamYard to cooperate. Oh, come on, StreamYard. If my computer will cooperate now. Any day now. I don't know why things are taking so long. Come on. What the heck? There we go. Maybe. Well, dang it. Hang on, let me figure this out. Dang it. What is it doing? Where'd it go? Oh, I know what it's doing. Oh, it's in the wrong browser. Stop it. Okay. Here we go. Now I got it. I fixed it.
Where are the gerbils?
Come on, StreamYard.
The gerbils. Please don't tell me you put a gerbil somewhere else. Oh God, there is a gerbil. There's multiple gerbils in his pants. For your safety, is there?
Okay, I'm not in this. I was just told about this morning, and Judy sent me the link.
Hilliard, Ohio are called to action when alarms trigger in several local businesses, reporting break-ins. As they race to the scene searching for the suspect, officers are oblivious to the strange chain of events about to unfold, culminating in an unexpected animal rescue mission.
Oh God, they're gonna request this body camera video.
At the crack of dawn on a July morning, a man out walking his dog calls 911 after hearing alarms and witnessing a break-in at a nearby construction company in Hilliard, Ohio.
There's someone in the back. They're breaking in something.
How many people are out there?
I don't see anything, but I hear them plain as daylight.
Even though the caller can hear the destruction echoing across the street, he offers no clue as to who might be doing this or how many people may be involved.
I just hear a whole bunch of banging, like boom, boom.
All right, we'll get someone out there.
Yes, ma'am.
Just as emergency dispatch notifies the officers, another call comes in minutes later. This time, the caller is the general manager of Roosters.
I did a full on the cameras and I got a description of the person. It looks like a late teens to mid 20s Hispanic male. He has I can't tell if it's camo, but it's a print sweatsuit on, and he has a book bag on too, and it looks like he was on foot.
As officers reach Roosters, emergency dispatch relays crucial information to help them secure the building.
Close, please. Anybody in here make something known? I think she said she only saw one. It almost looks like blood, but I don't see blood anywhere else. I've been looking on the floor, and it doesn't make sense that he would have blood on a rock before he threw it through the window. Yeah.
Even though officers are unsure about the substance, it seems that the suspect may have used the rock to break into the restaurant.
Yeah, that makes sense that it'd be dried, but it looks like blood. Yeah, it is. Fresh.
With a probability of blood at the crime scene, officers try to find its source, completely unaware of a brewing disturbance developing rapidly at a nearby business.
I'll go see if I can figure out the answer to this.
As the officers regroup at the parking lot, one of them shares vital information of a potential suspect from a sighting he had earlier.
I saw him over by like Westchester walking on the side of the road. Hey, it literally looks like those pajamas, like Peter Pan pajamas. Yeah.
It might look like that in the camera on the outdoor.
Well, the one I saw was a real dark skin. There's also dark, so. Oh no, the one I saw was definitely that black.
The officer's description of the suspect matches the one that Rooster's manager had shared earlier. As officers chalk out their next plan of action, an unexpected update comes over the radio that escalates this situation into the realm of the bizarre.
Exactly what you'd wear if you were gonna go breaking into stores.
Of course, that's in there on its own couch. Where? Oh.
At Petland, placed closer to Roosters in the same shopping center, an officer reports seeing dogs in the parking lot.
Oh no.
As officers race over to the store, they encounter a bewildering scene of chaos.
Yeah, there's a lot of blood there. Well, let's clear it. I definitely can't put them in between those two.
Is there anybody out back?
Before we clear this, we'll walk back.
The address is 5253 Toad Run Road. And if we can work on a key holder, that lands out in the parking lot.
As dozens of animals and birds wander around the parking lot, officers are overwhelmed by the mayhem on a morning destined to grow even more outlandish.
There's about 20 exotic birds, a couple bunnies, and a couple dogs running around the parking lot right now.
All right, 9190, 9191. You guys turn that way on a 50.
Come here. Okay. Come here. Come here. Okay. Come on. Here's your brother, sister, whatever it is. You guys are siblings.
Well, those puppies are in cages, so he had to have been in the back messing with it.
If you can get whatever you want, makes most amount of sense. Grab the corner or something, just watch that top.
Just knock that glass.
Say, we got
Boom. Nice.
Oh, he's down in the west. That's what he Make yourself known for now.
sure that's two of them.
So cute.
Yeah, there's two of them that are busted. How do they even get back here though? Because there's no.
I don't think you went back. Busted open and they come out of here.
Yeah.
I mean, like I don't even see any keys.
Yeah. Maybe it's like.
The animals inside appear safe and unharmed, but it will soon become clear that not all of the animals are accounted for. Finding them will result in one of the evening's most shocking moments, but in the meantime, police will have to catch over a dozen biting birds without losing their nerve.
All right, we're going to start trying to catch all these exotic birds.
I've never catch. I'm not a bird guy. I have no idea what to do.
Well, aside from the gerbils, was he just letting the other animals go? He's like, free all the other animals, and I'm just gonna stick all the other gerbils in places where they shouldn't be?
Got blood all over you, buddy. Come on. I don't know if you're gonna bite or what. Never. Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah, I'm getting in my head.
Here, you.
Go in there, fly away.
You can see it bit me hard. Sure did.
As officers turn their attention back to the chain of events that led to this inexplicable situation full of wandering animals, they find an answer to an earlier mystery.
All right, so question is so he came out, because he's leaking pretty good in there. Did he hit up there? Well, he had to have hit up Roosters, because that's how the rock got bloody. I don't see blood anywhere else. And it doesn't make sense that he would have blood on a rock before he threw it through the window.
Yeah.
And we never got an alarm from here, right?
Right.
So he hit this place first, then hit Roosters, because that's where the rock came from.
Yeah, but he's bleeding a lot more here.
But he could have wrapped it up in the
Maybe.
meantime.
Got a pet by chance?
I know, that's the thing. It's like,
As officers look for evidence to nab their suspect, they return to Roosters, and with the help of the general manager, they review the footage from the restaurant's CCTV cameras to confirm if the individual they saw earlier is the same person seen in the security footage.
That's not the guy.
I don't think it's the same guy. So it looks like another guy in cheetah print.
What the hell?
There's another one?
Yeah, it's him. Because I recognize that thing tied around his neck. It's pink. You saw him pink shirt. Yeah. Yep, we know him.
Officers finally have the breakthrough they'd been looking for. Having identified the one person responsible for the incomprehensible bedlam this morning, they relay the information to dispatch, who further confirms their doubts.
154, that's our known suspect from a run earlier. It's going to be Matthew Pancake.
Authorities are quite familiar with Matthew Pancake.
That's his real name.
Only a year earlier, on June 1st, 2023, Matthew was sentenced to 36 months of community control for breaking and entering. Even after being charged with possession of substance, failing to report for community control, and testing positive for substances, he was reinstated to community control on March 7, 2024, only 4 months before this incident. While officers inch closer to finding Matthew Pancake, they follow his line of vandalism toward Famous Footwear, a business located approximately half a mile south of Petland.
Do what? We're good if you want to keep going south.
I hit that corner. I was like, why are there all these shoes and stuff on the corner of Aldi? He broke it.
No, there's blood there too.
Yeah, I think this was after the fact, though.
Well, yeah.
A familiar
I literally, I'm gonna go down here and check behind the strip mall, and I saw a big thing of shoes. Yeah. And I drove down. I'm like, oh yeah, he broke in the fan store.
Is there anything I see down there by the car?
Yeah, he threw some stuff down there, and then there's past Aldi. There's a bunch of.
There is still stuff past.
Yeah, there's stuff past Aldi.
Okay.
Trail of, I think
As officers continue searching southbound, a witness finally shares information they've been desperately waiting for.
He definitely is moving southbound, so he's.
Apparently, he has animals stuffed in his.
Oh, well, I'd say there was 2 dogs, bunny, chinchilla, a bunch of birds.
I talked to over here at the gas station. It's like, yeah, he had gerbils all down his pants.
What the suspect wants with gerbils stuffed inside his pants is anyone's guess, but officers are about to find out soon with a new break in the case.
And where are you, ma'am? I'm in the parking lot of Big Lots. Have you heard about the guy who broke into Petland? Yes. I'm looking right at him. He's asleep on a bench.
The Big Lots is located approximately 3/4 of a mile north of Petland. This frustrating revelation means that the officers were barking up the wrong tree, following Matthew's trail in the opposite direction.
Yeah, it looks like he also tried to break into the smokehouse, bait shop. The glass is shattered and there's a rock on the ground.
At long last, authorities have located their perpetrator, but they have to act fast before he awakes and commits more acts of destruction.
Oh, he's moving. Wait, no. All right, let me know when he leaves if he gets up. No, it looks like he's just scratching his face. He's still laying there.
They think the suspect is sleeping on the bench. He's in a leopard print onesie.
South of Roberts. Wait. Yeah, Roberts is down there, right? I don't know this. I don't know. Yeah. Is it? Wait. There's Nike Drive. No, it's north. Turn around.
After a fruitless wild goose chase leading south, Officers who are unfamiliar with the area frantically search for the big lots.
Big lots.
That's Renner. This is Roberts. Go.
Road.
Cut it.
Why
Go.
don't the officers know where they're going?
Go.
No, wait, where are we at?
Look, I made a game time call. What is this road? I don't know what this road is. Big Lots is there. Big Lots is there. Cut right. I mean, we're at Big Lots, right? Yeah.
Come back around again.
Oh, where? God damn it, Ian. Come back around.
Come back around where?
I don't know.
Oh, these are here. Oh, we passed it.
Okay. I'll glove up. I'm good.
Moments later, backup arrives, and a frenzied struggle ensues as officers pounce on Matthew and attempt to put an end to this night of havoc.
I got second hands.
We're getting close.
Yeah, I got calls on.
Mr. Pancake, you want to go around?
Don't move.
Get on your belly. Get on your belly.
On your belly. On your belly.
Roll over. Get on your belly, Mr. Pancake.
Get on your belly.
In the name of the law, Pancake, get on your belly. What's going on? I got one for you, shit.
Is that
Your other hand.
Other hand right here.
There's a lot of blood.
After subduing him, officers notice copious amounts of blood leaking from Matthew's wounded hands. But this is far from the most compelling piece of evidence they're about to uncover.
Knew we'd find him.
Good job, Mr. Pancakes.
Knew we'd find him eventually.
Where are the gerbils?
Where are the gerbils? All right. In case nobody mentioned it already, you're under arrest. I think we did like 7 times. Go ahead, roll on my side.
You got clothes on under this? Where's the pink / white?
He said he was taking him for arson yesterday.
Oh, there's something in this.
Yeah, what am I even arrested for? I was walking around. Okay.
You weren't. You were
Grab your hand.
a bitch.
My hands have been working all day. I've been
As Matthew offers weak excuses for the cuts, officers are closer to confirming what the witness had reported.
Right.
5439 Roberts Road, I copy. And is it okay for the medics to go in? I told him it was.
Yep, we got the gerbil bandit.
Is it glass?
Okay.
There's a dog collar.
The hell am I under arrest for? Seriously. B&E. Criminal damaging.
Oh, God, there's
Abusing animals. Oh, there are gerbils in there. Animal abuse.
What the heck? I got a gerbil. What the heck?
Multiple gerbils.
In his pants.
Multiple gerbils recovered.
Astonishingly, 2 live gerbils are recovered from Matthew's pants, and against all odds, they appear to be unharmed.
Thank God.
Okay.
We're just advising that our suspect had multiple gerbils.
Okay.
Somebody get my shears. Do you have any more pets? Do you have any more gerbils on you?
Please don't tell me you put a gerbil somewhere else.
Grab my shears.
For your safety, is there a gerbil inside you?
Grab my shears and cut further up that pant leg.
Without a doubt, hunting for gerbils inside Matthew is the last thing any of these officers want to do.
And probably this one because there's it in there too.
I don't do rats. Mice. I don't.
It's not a rat. It's a gerbil.
Gerbil. How many gerbils guys home, sir?
Breaking and entering.
We're talking multiple gerbils. Run all over you, and you have merchandise
And glass and gerbils.
And gerbils that you stole and abused.
Cody, you know what you got to do.
I got you. Gerbil recovery. Gerbil.
The situation immediately moves from shocking to hilarious as officers struggle to secure the gerbils.
Oh, you want a bag for them? I don't know. That seems mean. They've been traumatized enough.
That's a bag. I mean, the shit. Oh, these are some boots.
Yeah. Do you want me to hang on to these as evidence or photograph them and return them to the store? Let's check. Make sure when we stand him up, we check him real carefully for more gerbils in his pants.
Yeah.
Lots of glass falling out.
LT, we got the I'm sorry, LTs. We got the gerbils.
Yeah. We're in
his
his pants. Oh, this is the greatest run ever.
Matthew offers no explanation for his actions and is taken into custody.
What are you going to do with them? It's going to, I don't know, we're going to take a picture of him and take him back to the pet store.
Oh, yeah. Taking pictures
There's only two?
He's put together as well.
That's all we found so far.
They said he had two in his.
Oh, it was in his.
He had all that litter and stuff shoved in.
They were living in his pant leg.
They were desperately trying to escape his pant leg. They were not living there by any means.
Amid a surreal situation involving property destruction, bleeding wounds, and stolen gerbils, officers pause a moment to document this unforgettable night.
No, we can't.
I'm not like, we're not going to put him in a bag and take him to the park.
I mean, if they're not going to be able to sell them, maybe we can keep them as 8-sub mascots.
Yeah. If you got your gloves off, do you mind folding those up for me? You got blood on you? He's going to have to take those with us and go back over there. They're getting anxious.
Put
them in your pants.
Traumatized.
Are we going to take them back to PetSmart? We're going to transport them to PetSmart.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. They're really trying to get away. Does somebody have a paper bag?
Can they chew their way out on that?
Yeah, they can chew their way out of a paper bag.
They're going to get in a crash because gerbils are going to break free and they're going to jump in the well.
I see it now. What was the contributing factor? The escaped gerbil.
4-minute ride back.
Yeah. I see
Kiss it.
All right, you're holding that.
We're going to run these back.
No, I got those in gray. From
But I am
From Jeff's
concerned about
guy.
these chewing their way out.
Those are my good stuff, too.
Yeah. Ooh, I can feel them.
Okay, no. They come up with a cooperation name for this. And when I put on my resume that I led Operation Gerbil Bandit.
Operation Gerbil.
Oh, God, they're going to request.
These big ass cops afraid of gerbils. This is hilarious.
This body camera video.
Do you have the gerbils?
Yes, I got the gerbils.
Sir, ma'am.
83.
We're going to have a couple of gerbil 5-1s back at Petland.
I copy. Are they okay for though?
I think just emotional trouble. Otherwise.
You cannot make this up.
No.
And we were both looking that way.
Yeah.
But we drove right past it.
Because we were looking at the people flashing their lights.
Yeah. I was like, where the f*** is the... And we got it.
Miraculously, all of the gerbils survived and were returned safely to Petland.
Oh, they're so
Matthew
cute.
Pancake, the stylized gerbil bandit, was charged with 3 counts of breaking and entering. He initially pleaded not guilty. On September 17th, 2024, Matthew entered a plea deal and pleaded guilty to all 3 counts. He was sentenced to 12 months in the Ohio Department of Rehabilitation and Correction and asked to pay a fine of up to $2,500.
Oh, man. That was hilarious. Thank you, Judy. Oh, my gosh. I laughed so hard I cried. Oh, wow. At least they weren't put someplace else. Oh, that's insane. Oh my gosh. What are you guys arresting me for? Oh. Okay, guys. So now I'm glad we did that because now we have to go listen to 2 guys talk about the worst day of their life. So I will see you guys over at the Burned and Battered trial. I've got it set up to redirect. I will see you over there if you are joining me. If not, I will see you again tomorrow morning. So you guys have a good day. Bye.